In today's video, we're looking at one of the most hyped running back prospects in this year's draft class. Yes, we're finally looking at Cam Skattebo, running back out of Arizona State. What are his strengths and weaknesses? Where do we think he's utilized at the next level? What's his draft stock looking like? And most importantly, how is he going to do for us in fantasy? Watch the end of this video and you should have a pretty good idea. Alright, so in terms of Skattebo's height and weight, PFF has him listed at 5'11", 215 pounds. I think he's slightly shorter and slightly bigger than that. I think he's around that 5'9" to 5'10" range, in that 230 to 235 for weight range. He is 23 years old at the moment and will be 23 for the entirety of his rookie season. Now, moving on to his production, he was a 2-year player at Sacramento State, where he did produce relatively well in his rookie season, his freshman season per se. He had 520 yards, 9.1 yards per carry, and 6 touchdowns. Not much through the air, though. But then he stepped it up as a sophomore at Sacramento State. He had 1,400 yards almost and 7 touchdowns compared to his almost 400 yards in the air and 3 touchdowns. So he stepped it up through the air big time. So for whatever reason, he transferred to Arizona State, I guess to play in a bigger environment, bigger stage, right? Get some more attention as far as moving his draft stock up. So as a junior, he rushed for almost 800 yards and 9 touchdowns. So his touchdowns numbers went up for sure. And his passing numbers were still pretty adequate, right? Almost 300 yards, a touchdown through the air. So very good. And then his senior season, if you guys watched any college football this past season, Cam Skattebo was a name that you were seeing, especially on ESPN, pretty constantly, especially towards the end of the season. So he just destroyed college football this past season. I'm a Mississippi State fan, and we unfortunately had to play him early on in the year, and he just destroyed us. I mean, he went for, I think, over 200 yards against us. It was not pretty. He had 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns just rushing. And you see his, outside of his junior year, his yards per attempt have been very good. And he had almost 300 carries this year and still almost averaged 6 yards a carry. That's insane. And now looking at his yards through the air, he led all running backs this year in terms of receiving yards, 543 and 3 touchdowns. Most of that was dump off behind the screens, behind the line of scrimmage type stuff. So he actually had more yards after the catch than he actually had receiving yards, funnily enough. So if you're looking at these numbers, I mean, he definitely has some impressive numbers for sure. So in terms of some advanced stats for Skattebo, we looked at every draft-eligible FBS running back with at least 100-plus attempts, which is about 75 running backs. We also saw that Cam Skattebo had 294 carries, which is a ton of volume. I think he was only second behind Genty in carries, so that's pretty impressive. Means that he can handle the workload at the NFL level. So as far as yards per attempt go, he had 5.8, which was tied for 16th in the sample size. Considering he had a lot of attempts, that's pretty impressive to be in that top 20 range. So as far as his yards after contact per attempt, 4.09 was 10th in the sample size. He is a vicious runner of the football. I mean, vicious. He is so physical. He's running over people, bouncing off of tackles. He has probably the best contact balance in the class because of his shorter, bulky frame. Super strong as well. So I'm not surprised to see him that high. Now, as far as his breakaway run percentage goes, you're going to see on film, he's not really that fast or agile, really. So he's not going to be breaking many big-time runs at the next level. His 34.9 was tied for 41st in the sample size. So he's not going to be breaking off big-time runs, right, at the next level. He's just not that fast. Now, Looking at his PFF rushing grade, 94.6 was second only behind Genty, which is very impressive considering Genty's coming off one of the best running back collegiate seasons of all time. So that's really good. He's a very good runner of the football, so I can see why he's all the way up there. I will say Arizona State had the fourth best run blocking O-line per PFF, so is it the O-line's fault that he got that many yards? Is it a mixture of both? In my opinion, it's a mixture of him being a great runner and the O-line being good. We've seen good Arizona State running backs come before Skattebo as well, so I think it was a mixture. Now, as far as his PFF receiving grade goes, 79.7 was fifth. I will say he's mainly getting these dump-off passes, and he's getting a bunch of yards after the catch, like I said earlier, just because he's able to break off so many tackles, which we'll get to in a moment. But I do think his receiving grade is good enough to be fifth in the class. I don't know if he catches that many passes at the next level, but there is that. Now, his yards per route run was 1.91, which was fourth in the class. I don't know how much of a receiver he's going to be at the next level. I'm glad he's able to do it and be effective at the collegiate level. I just think that there's more dynamic players in the receiving game than he is. He's just not fast enough to get these routes. I mean, he could definitely be a 3-down back at the next level for sure. But if you have a guy like Kenneth Gainwell or Justice Hill or Ty Johnson, for example, I don't think he's going to be on the field on these third down plays for sure. Now, as far as his elusiveness rating goes, I was very surprised to see that he's fifth in the sample size. Now, I don't know if PFF includes broken tackles through physicality in his elusiveness rating. If they do, that makes sense. But you'll notice when the grading part comes along, I just don't think he's particularly elusive when it comes to agility and things like that. He's kind of like your run into people, run through people type of runner and just use purely physicality to get yards. He's not very agile in my opinion. So if it's purely based off agility, I wouldn't agree with this at all. When it comes to missed tackles forced, 103 was second, only behind Genty, of course. That makes total sense to me. He's super physical. He's got this small, compact frame, low center of gravity. He's one of the hardest, if not the most hard person to bring down in open field. He's just extremely hard to tackle. Now, moving on to rushing yards per game, he had 142 rushing yards a game, which is absolutely bonkers. And moving on to his receiving yards a game, 45.25 for a running back. That's super solid numbers. And total touchdowns, he had 2 touchdowns a game, guys. That's absolutely nuts. So in terms of advanced stats and analytics, I mean, he's super up there in terms of elite, great production this year. So let's move on to some of the grades. My favorite part of the video. So quick recap. Cam Skattebo is a running back out of Arizona State. He's in that 5'9", 5'10" range, from 225 to 235. I think that's where he'll weigh in around the combine time. Our valuation of him, we think he's worthy of a 4th-round pick. He could definitely go in that 3rd-round range. His college football playoff performance and his performance just down the stretch versus BYU and Iowa State, and particularly Texas, was super impressive. And if he performs pretty well at the combine, he could be a 2nd-round pick even. That's how important his combine is, I think, in my opinion. My high comp for him was Marshawn Lynch, but with more pass catching ability. Like I said, I don't know how much he'll be utilized in the pass game at the next level, but he definitely has shown through his 4 years of college, he can do it for sure. Now, my low comp for him was Khalil Herbert. So, Khalil Herbert, at least in 2024, he was used as like this goal line, hard nosed running back. And if you played fantasy in 2024, especially towards the mid part of the year, Khalil Herbert was scoring pretty much every single week, at least once or twice, because they were giving him these goal line carries. So that could be his floor as like a goal line back at the next level. I do think that he will be involved in whatever teams that drafts him. I think he'll be involved in their backfield in some way or another. Obviously, I don't feel like he's going to be all practice squad guy. I think he's too good for that. But definitely seeing him being in the rotation. If he gets some success, if he gets on a team with some good run blocking, I could easily see him take over the backfield and be a 3-down back for sure. Now, as far as our official grade for him, we gave him a 72.5 out of 100, which is on the lower end of the good prospects in this class. He could grade out better, but just in our opinion, the agility and the speed is the thing that really brought his grade down a good bit. So, moving on to some of the things that he does exceptionally well. As far as his contact balance, I don't know if there's another player in this class that has better contact balance than Cam Skattebo. Obviously, Genty's up there as well, but he's just super, super hard to tackle. I mean, it's truly impressive how hard it is to tackle. He bounces off tackles. He fights through tackles. You're not arm tackling this guy. You have to wrap him up from his hips or his knees or something like that, or he's just going to run through the tackle and keep chugging along. Now, as far as his physicality goes, might be the most physical back in the class. He for sure relies on physicality more than pretty much any of the other backs. He reminds me of like Mike Allstott kind of, where he just literally runs through guys. Like, just runs through them. He's not trying to make them miss with elusiveness or anything like that. He's just trying to bulldoze through tackles and just keep going until he's eventually brought down. In terms of his vision, I generally thought that he was pretty solid at finding the holes when they were open. Now, my problem is I saw him too many times just get stopped at the goal line for maybe a 1 or 2 yard gain when his first read, as far as holes go, was closed off or wasn't available. He didn't really have that agility to cut back and find the second hole right. He just doesn't have that lateral agility, in my opinion. So that knocked his vision down a little bit. So we gave him a 3.5 out of 5 there. Now, ball security, he has fumbled a little bit. He fumbled a few times this year, but he had a lot of carries this year. So he hasn't fumbled very much, but, with more volume generally comes more fumbles. So we gave him 4 out of 5. It's not really much to worry about at the next level. In terms of run IQ, the thing that kind of worries me a little bit about Skattebo is that he's just straight line. He runs and just keeps going in that line until he's brought down. He doesn't really have that ability to find other lanes or find the right lane to get the most yardage. I mean, he's just fighting. He's running in a straight line and he's running through tackles until he's tackled. And that's the majority of his runs. So I'd like it if he would, try to get into open space instead of just running through tackles, just brute forcing his way through for yards. So we gave him a 3.5 there. As far as speed and acceleration goes, it's average. I mean, he's probably a 4.5, 4.6 guy. Definitely nothing special with the long speed either. So we gave him a 6 out of 10 there. In terms of acceleration, it's not very good either. 6 out of 10 as well. He didn't really speed up super quick. He didn't really have a tremendous burst off the line either. So that's one of my biggest concerns with him because everybody's faster in the NFL. So, these holes are going to close up faster and, he's not super good at getting skinny and finding these smaller holes that if they close up, it just ends up being nothing, right? In terms of his deceleration, I did see a couple times on film where he would, get caught up in a tackle and then he would just kind of explode out of it, and not really say it's like a burst, but I mean, he does use some explosiveness and then gets back into running as soon as possible. So we gave him a 3.5 out of 5 there. In terms of his agility, he just doesn't use it. Now, I don't know if that's because he can't use it or he just chooses not to and he just wants to run through tackles. So we gave him a 2 out of 5. We rarely saw it, and when we did, it didn't look particularly impressive. It's definitely below average in our opinion. In terms of his change of direction, it's a 2.5 out of 5. He just doesn't really change direction. Like I said, over and over, he just runs straight, runs through tackles. He gets as many yards as he can until he falls down. That's the type of runner that you need to expect out of Cam Skattebo. Now, obviously, some of this can be coached, but it's just how he runs, man. It's just his run style. And, I mean, I think it's effective at the next level, but, you know, don't expect him to be a Saquon Barkley out there and able to, you know, change direction and hurl over guys and juke people out and stuff like that and cut his way up the field. He's just not doing that. In terms of catching, no concerns really there. I've seen him catch some really tight windowed throws. I've seen him, you know, be very sure-handed. So we gave him a 5 out of 5 there. No issues there. Route running was pretty solid as well. You know, the routes that he did run, he ran pretty solid. You know, even the routes in the slot, which were kind of odd, you know, to see a running back lineup in the slot that's not usual per se. So 4 out of 5 there. Run after catch, he's pretty much just as dynamic with the ball in his hands when he gets the ball thrown to him as he is when he gets the ball handed off to him. Super physical, really hard to bring down. So we gave him a 3.5 out of 5 there. Pass protection. Now, you would think a guy that's as physical as Cam Skattebo is would be really good in pass protection, and he is. He just doesn't hold up as much as you would like because he's a smaller back. In some of the reps, we've seen him kind of miss blocks because of hand placement and you know, technique as well. He doesn't really have a great anchor either. So we gave him a 3.5 out of 5. He's definitely very willing, and like you hear a lot of people say, half of the battle with pass protection is just willingness. So when it comes to dog factor, we gave him a 5 out of 5. Like we said, he's very willing in pass pro. He loves contact and doesn't do anything other than absorb contact. In terms of analytics, we gave him a 3.5 out of 5. His analytics in 2023 weren't as good, and he wasn't nearly as efficient. But his 2 seasons over 1,000 yards, and especially this past season, were good. Definitely above average for a running back for sure. Now, his projected draft capital, he is projected to be a 4th-round pick, so we gave him a 2.5 out of 5 there. And then in terms of his creativity, when I, you know, talk about him running in straight lines, you know, it does sound like he's pretty not creative when it comes to running the ball, but he is pretty much. I mean, he's pretty creative with the ball in his hands. You know, he finds creative ways to get out of contact, get out of tackles, finds creative ways to get out of tackles, as, you know, things like that. That's in the way where I think he's creative, not, you know, cutting back and finding these exotic run lanes. He's not really that good at doing that. So we gave him a 3.5 out of 5 there. Now, in terms of potential worries and limitations for him, the biggest thing that I see, obviously, you know, guys are physical in college on defense. You know, it's going to be hard to, you know, break through tackles at the collegiate level. But, man, in the NFL, it's a completely different ball game. So my main worry with him is that he's super physical, and if he keeps taking hits like this at the NFL level, he could have a pretty short-lived NFL career, and he could run into a lot of injuries. Now, he's held up with a bunch of carries this year, but I just don't know how long a back can sustain a career with good production if you're playing like this 24/7. And then the other limitation with him is that he doesn't possess high-end speed or agility, and he solely relies on physicality, and I don't know how effective that will be at the next level. So, where does Cam Skattebo rank among the other running backs in this 2025 class? Well, at the moment, we have him towards the lower end of prospects. As we get through more of these running back prospects, he's towards the middle tier, right, of running backs for us. He just has a few limitations for us. How he grades in our model isn't particularly great because his athleticism is so linear when it comes to just pure physicality, and that's it. So, he's in that Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, Woody Marks territory, which obviously we're super big fans of all of those guys. But like we said, this running back class is absolutely stacked. And, we just don't think he's in that Quishon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey range, right? Guys that are more well-rounded. I do think Judkins and Skattebo do have some similarities, but I think Judkins is just better at, improvising running lanes and things like that. And he's still physical, but can also be elusive with agility from time to time when needed. He's a little bit faster than Skattebo too, in my opinion. So, he just has some limitations, and I don't think he's going to be a bad player by no means. I think he's going to be involved in whatever backfield he goes to, and as long as he doesn't have any bad injuries, he'll be in the NFL for, 5+ years probably. All right, last but not least, we want to give a special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Mazjack, and Infamy MTG for supporting the channel. We really do appreciate it. Now, if you want to become a Patreon member yourself, you gain access to a lot of really cool things, including a private Discord server, private live streams. We release videos early on Patreon as well, so you get early access to videos. Also, we even do custom videos as well per request. We've already done one on Isaac Garindo, and we're looking forward to do plenty more of those as well. And also, if you're liking the content, please like, comment, subscribe. It definitely helps us out with the algorithm for sure. And last but not least, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.